Hey, LarkenRose here, doing a short rant about something I see come up from time to time, and it's kind of annoying and ridiculous, but it's also kind of human nature, so I thought I'd talk about it. The sort of dramatic version of the phenomenon I saw a couple days ago, where somebody, again, was basically saying, oh, all you do is, like, talk and say words, talk about ideas. This is no time for it. To quote John Candy, or one of his characters anyway, there's a time to think and there's a time to act, and this is no time to think. So I totally understand when people get frustrated by authoritarian BS and nasty stuff going on, and they want to be able to lash out, and they want to be able to go, like, beat up the bad guys and fix it and make everything right. The problem with that is that that approach fails to take into account the fact that the actual root of authoritarian problems is not the particular people in power. It's not a particular regime. It is the belief system of the people. And so most of the time when you're talking about, oh, we need to overthrow the blah, 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 okay, then what? You'd still have a population of statists, and what they would do, as long as they're statists, is put up a new ruling class. What would you have accomplished? And it's funny, because this guy was even directly talking about, basically saying, we need the American Revolution, we need to go back to 1776, or I think he said 1780 something, like the Constitution came after the Revolution. But he was referring to that time. That's what we need. And I said, did you notice what actually happened after the American Revolution? Because what happened after the American Revolution is a new ruling class grew, which was very quickly worse than what people had to tolerate under a king. Like being colonies of the British Crown, they were infinitely more free than they were not that long after under a constitutional republic, which was worse. And so I think, and the thing is, people often confuse understanding that with deciding that, oh, well, you're a pacifist or something, or you don't believe in. There's the concept of the right of self-defense. And that applies against badge wearers and thugs of the state exactly as it applies to everybody else. You have the right to defend yourself by force if necessary from aggressors. And whether there's a law behind the aggression or the aggressors are wearing badges or military uniforms makes absolutely no difference at all to the morality of the situation and the morality of forcibly resisting. Now, in addition to the moral principle, there's the practical considerations where in a lot of situations you can say, well, I have the right to disobey and resist this particular act of authoritarian injustice, and that can be true, and in a lot of settings, the result of that would be you get killed. Like, maybe you take some of them with you, but you die, and almost everybody thinks you're the bad guy, because if you had just obeyed the law, they wouldn't have had to, like, shoot 7,000 rounds into your house and then burn it to the ground. But that's your fault, because you didn't do as you're told. And that's the thing, is if the mentality of the people is that government's legitimate and we're obligated to obey whatever crap they call law, the violence doesn't solve anything. That's not to say it isn't justified, but one, it doesn't solve anything, and two, it often doesn't accomplish anything. And which doesn't mean it's not justified, and it doesn't mean I can't sympathize with people who say, like, when they do this, like, we have the right to resist by force. Yeah, you do, in a whole lot of cases. There are lots and lots and lots of instances every stinking day in the U.S. and around the world where victims of authoritarian aggression absolutely have the right to use defensive force and to escalate that defensive force to match the aggressive force that cops are going to escalate, because that's what they always do. I've talked about that before. Cops are the great escalators. They can take the most minor thing and escalate it to killing you if you don't bow down to their power. I've talked about this a million times. When they put on the red and blue lights, that is literally a death threat. They are saying, you will pull over or very bad things are going to happen to you. Now, there's a lot of in-between chances where you can grovel and hope they don't shoot you, but the moment they put on those lights, it's not a polite request. They're saying, you're going to stop, or we're going to keep calling in more and more of our gang members until you stop. And then we are going to put you in a cage if you made us go to that extra length to make you stop. And if, heaven forbid, you decide to defend yourself against them trying to capture you, they will kill you. How many examples in real life do you need to see that that's true? Now, every once in a blue moon, there's somebody who actually did something bad enough where forcibly detaining them is actually justified. The vast majority of the time, when the cops put on the red and blue lights, that is not at all the case. They are threatening violence against somebody for, you didn't have the right sticker on your car, or your window tint might be a little bit darker than some arbitrary bullshit rule made up by political parasites, or any number of bogus, victimless crimes that the ruling class just pulls out of their rear end. So most of the time, cops are aggressors. Once in a blue moon, they actually stop another aggressor, in which case, well, good for you for that moment. Meanwhile, you get paid every day with stolen loot that was extorted from people who had no choice in the matter. Anyway, talked about that a million times, so I don't need to give a 3-hour speech on that again. But the justification of resisting is completely independent of whether it would do any good. So if I'm driving down the road and, if I had the wrong sticker on my car and didn't notice or something, which that's happened to me. It's actually been a really long time since that happened. But that's happened to me where the registration expired and I didn't know. And so the red and blue lights come on. I'm not going to have a shootout with them. I'm going to let them immorally detain me and then give me a piece of paper and try to rob me and maybe successfully rob me. Because even though I absolutely have the right to ignore their lights, I absolutely have the right to evade capture for something that was in no way immoral. I wasn't endangering anybody. I wasn't hurting anybody. All I was doing was disobeying some arbitrary, completely BS, made-up command of political parasites. I would absolutely be morally in the right to evade them and use force if I have to avoid capture. But I'm not going to do that because it wouldn't accomplish anything, and it would make it so I couldn't accomplish anything else later on. Now, there's also some people who say that, well, you're not a real anarchist unless you're, ready to die in a hail of gunfire over the wrong registration sticker on your car or something. And that's just logistically stupid. And it's sort of like, if somebody lives in some city where the mafia reigns and, some business owner pays the protection racket fees to the mafia to avoid having his kneecap smashed. That's not the same as that guy approving of the mafia and liking what they're doing. It's just self-preservation, like the victim doing what he has to minimize harm to himself, and just he has the right to decide how much he's going to do that. So the idea that everybody should die in a hail of gunfire every time there's some bogus law being enforced, that doesn't go well. And to get back to the main point of the rant here, not only does that do nothing to change the mindset of the people, it actually makes it worse. Because when you see, this person was pulled over for an expired whatever the heck, and then there's this shootout, almost everybody decides, well, the person who fired at the cops is a, obviously evil psycho, which sometimes they are evil psychos too. But trying to avoid being caged for not having the right piece of paper when that was your only offense, that was your only violation, not that you endangered anyone or threatened anyone or harmed anyone, just you didn't do the paperwork that the politician said you had to, almost everybody views the victim of that immoral aggression as the bad guy. And the more the victim escalates that, the worse they are in the eyes of most people. Now, does that have any bearing on morality? No. Is the person still morally justified in resisting? Yeah. Is it going to end well? No, almost never. Very, very rarely does that end well for the person trying to resist authoritarian aggression, because the mentality of the people is the thing that matters. And I've talked a zillion times about how the fact that when you say, oh, you're just saying words, that's literally the thing that has progressed basically every step in the progression of humanity and human society came from people saying words. Now, often things then escalated into resistance, like, you know, with the abolitionists trying to end slavery. The first thing was people saying, this is really bad, this shouldn't be happening, this is not at all okay. And some went to government and said, this should be illegal. And others said, I'm not going to wait around for them to make it like illegal to own people. I'm going to sabotage and try to help save slaves escape, and, you know, Underground Railroad and all that. But that depends on a change in mentality, because for most of human history, most of the world thought that slavery was okay. And I don't mean most of the white world, I mean most of the whole stinking world. People had owned each other, or claimed to, for thousands of years, all over the whole damn planet. And it wasn't until some people, some black people, some white people, some Asian people, a whole bunch of people along the line said, I don't think this is okay. This is messed up. Human beings shouldn't do this. And they said words. And then more and more minds changed until slavery was no longer a viable option, even for the people who didn't see anything wrong with it, which that's pretty demented. But the actual practical outcome depends upon how many people see reality and understand moral principles and say, we're not allowing this anymore. You know, whether or not you change the laws, we're not going to make you able to treat other people like you own them. That's profoundly, heinously evil, and we're not going to allow it anymore. But you don't get to, we're not going to allow it, without first changing people's minds. And so I know there's a bunch of frustrated people, and I sympathize, but there's a bunch of frustrated people who are like, but it's too frustrating trying to change minds. Let's just run off and to arms, and let's take down this system. And then what? Like, let's say you succeeded in the whatever country, and the U.S. government, we overthrew them. First of all, good luck. Like, that's not going to happen. But let's say, by a completely impossible miracle, a handful of angry rebels overthrew it. Now what? You have 300 and some million people who believe in having a ruling class. They're going to put up another one, and it's probably going to be worse than the one that came before, as demonstrated by the fact that that's almost always how revolutions go, including the American Revolution. In the long run, the result of the American Revolution was way, way, way less freedom. But we're the freest country on earth. No, we're not, by any measure, not financially, not socially, not in any way, and we're not even freer than the colonists were under a king when this was a British colony. So that's how much that revolution worked. Now, was it justified for them to say, we're not paying tribute to you, Georgie, King George III? We're not giving you money anymore. We're not obeying your... Yeah, that was completely justified. Did it help in the long run? Nope. Now, temporarily, it sort of helped because people went, rah, 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 we don't have to pay tribute to the twit on the other side of the world. Well, not quite the other side of the ocean, at least. Yay, good. A little bit of relative freedom for some people. Meanwhile, slavery was still happening. So there's a bunch of things messed up about that anyway. But the end result was way worse than what already existed because the people still believed in government, and they built something way worse than existed before. So when people now think that this has gotten so bad, we have to charge off and overthrow them or do something violently fix the solution. You can't violently fix the problem because the problem is a belief system in the minds of hundreds of millions of people. Well, billions if you count the whole planet, because the whole planet is statist And the line from V for Vendetta, ideas are bulletproof. That is absolutely true. It's good of true ideas. It's true of good ideas. Slightly dyslexic. And it's true of crappy ideas. You can't shoot away statism. You can't shoot away the belief in political authority. Violently resisting a particular aggressor and oppressor, even when it's completely morally justified, that's not going to magically change the mindset of all the people who were onlookers or taxpayers or proud law-abiding citizens who thought that was legitimate and who think the rebels are horrible and evil. It's not going to change anything. And so for the people who are impatient and think, all right, that's enough talking, we have to charge off, not only are you not going to fix the problem, you're going to make it worse. Because if there's a violent conflict between thugs of the state and people trying to resist their aggression, and most of the onlookers side with the badge-wearing aggressors, all you're going to do is strengthen the ruling class. Because people are going to go, well, this is why government needs more power, and the police need more funding, and we need a bigger military, and we need government spying on more people, and blah, 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 blah. We need more authoritarianism, because look at those troublemakers who tried to resist. So I don't want anybody mistaking this for me, like, condemning, oh, you have to go along with it and let them tromp on you. Like, no, you have no moral obligation to do that. And there are a number of lines, like, everybody decides their own line. There are a number of lines I have where, yeah, if you try that, I'm not going along quietly. I'm not going along peacefully. If you try to rob me because I have the wrong sticker on my car, I'm not going to die in a shootout over that. I'm going to let you rob me a little bit. And I'm going to pull over when you do the death threat with your red and blue lights. You're still an evil piece of crap, and I'm probably going to tell you that while you're pulling me over. But I'm not going to have a shootout. There are some things. I mentioned one recently. Like if I had a draft-age son and you tried to draft him, I would kill anybody who came to take him away, to send him to the military. I'm going to kill you if you do that. If you decide to confiscate all private firearms, that's the line for me. I would kill you if you did that. And so I have my lines. Now, does that mean that would end well? No, there are just certain things that I won't put up with, and there's certain things I will put up with. There's a lot of stupid authoritarian crap that I put up with. There's a lot of stupid authoritarian crap that the vast majority of voluntarists put up with because they don't want to die in a hail of bullets. But the people who want to skip the battle of ideas and go right to a battle of violence, at best, they don't understand the problem and they don't understand the solution. At worst, their frustration and their anger has built up inside them a bloodlust where they want the violence and they want the death and mayhem. We want to valiantly blood and guts everywhere. When somebody views that as... Tolkien did an awesome job. One of the things that pissed me off the most about the Lord of the Rings movies, which were pretty damn good overall, the distinction between Boromir and Faramir pissed me off because it was completely lost in the movie. In the books, Boromir is, I'm the great warrior, look at me, everybody praise me, because I, Boromir, am the great fighter and warrior. I'm really good at killing people. And the Faramir character, to sum it up a bit, is basically, yeah, I'm really good at killing people too, and that sucks. And I don't want to ever have to do that. And we do have to know how to do that. We have to be armed. We have to know how to do it. But the purpose of being capable of such violence is freedom, is the other end where we don't have to do that anymore. The glory isn't in the violence. It's not in the bloodshed and the strife and the mayhem. Anybody who's looking forward to that, there's sort of something wrong with you. Now, the people who say, like, instead of this slow torture, can't we just do that and get it over with? Like, that I can understand. But the people who sort of And I know some people just sort of joke about this and stuff, but the people who are like, great meteor 2024, just end everything in chaos and mayhem. And I know people joke. I mean, I've joked about that on occasion. But the people like who can't wait to have a giant shootout with death and destruction, first of all, they're almost always people who haven't seen such a thing. They haven't been in war. And so, yeah, you can say that's what you valiantly want until you're in it and you go, is that my leg over there? It's not where it's supposed to be, is it? Maybe this sucks. Maybe I should have said some more words before escalating this when most of the population would be against me. Oops. So it's just frustrating to see so many people who are not only pushing for something that's going to accomplish nothing, but they're pushing for something that's actually contrary to the battle that matters. Because most people, if you pick a fight by defending yourself against badge-wearing aggressors, they're going to see you as the bad guy for defending yourself. And you have every right to defend yourself anyway. But if they see you as the bad guy and they turn around and cheer for more authoritarian power to deal with horrible scofflaws like you, well, like, you may have done something morally justified, but in the big picture, you accomplished less than nothing positive. You made it worse. And governments always do that. Whenever there's, look at the complete non-insurrection of January 6th. That stupid frat party, especially the left, points at as like, oh my God, that was the biggest threat to, yeah, they were trying to overthrow the government. They just forgot to bring guns. And they just sort of walked around, and they mostly stayed between the velvet ropes. And then they were shaking hands with cops, and they wandered around, and they stole a podium and left. Like, that was not a revolution. But look how quickly and eagerly the political parasites use even that to say, this is why we need more power. Oh, that's a threat to our... That isn't a threat to any moral human being. It's not even a threat to the ruling class. But they are so eager to paint any resistance or any opposition as scary, horrible, dangerous terrorists. I mean, look at the dumbass Trudeau up in Canada, where people came and, like, had a nice party and, like, we're protesting, we don't like you treating us like this. They're all terrorists and racists and Nazis, and they kick puppies, and they're just making up the dumbest crap imaginable as an excuse to grab more power. Now, in that case, I think it was so overboard and idiotic that I think their propaganda didn't really do them any good, because tons of normal people were like, they just didn't like being treated like crap by you crooked, slimy bastards. But that's what they're going to try with any conflict between the state and people. And if you don't understand that, you're just going to accidentally feed their propaganda machine and give them a chance to go, see, look at these dangerous scofflaws, these dangerous anarchists who, when we, like, violently attack them, they defend themselves. They're so dangerous. And until the population is ready to actually think about that and actually think about how they view reality and government and authority and law and all that crap, the battle of ideas is still the only battle that matters in the long run. Doesn't mean you don't have the right to defend yourself. And like I said, there are lines where I will defend myself regardless of what it's going to do to the overall propaganda thing. And other people can decide where they draw their lines. But in the big picture, in the long run, the thing that matters is the mentality of the people, not the crooks in power. Because all of their power, every bit of it, comes from their victims, the victim class, imagining legitimacy to the authoritarian crap that the parasites do. And that is what has to change. And you can't change it with bullets. And you can't change it with anything other than words. So yes, I understand your impatience and frustration. And yes, there are times when, yep, it's time to resist by force, and it's justified, but that isn't the battle that determines the long-term future. That's the battle of ideas. And I know it takes patience, and it takes work, and it takes focusing on yourself and learning how to do things you don't know how to do. And that's why I'm working on the mirror. It's why we did the Candles in the Dark program, to get people better at talking to statists about what they believe, to more easily get people to question that stuff. But there is no skip to the finish line. This huge race that's humanity's been going through for centuries and centuries, millennia actually, you can't jump to the finish line and go, well, let's just be violent. That'll fix it. No, it won't. It'll make you back up in the race a little bit. And then the people who aren't dead will have to continue the process of just saying words to change people's minds. Because until people are free in their minds, they're not going to be free in body. They're not going to be free from authoritarianism. Even if they manage to overthrow one empire, they would just get another one. So, and if you don't yet understand that that's the problem, like, you could start by sorting out your own brain, read The Most Dangerous Superstition, and if you do understand that people's mentality is the problem, then we have Candles in the Dark to help people be better at talking to other people. But yeah, I sympathize, but please don't make things worse for the cause of freedom by thinking that jumping to a violent solution is a solution at all, because it's not.